The letter had said he was a good man. That was all Petra Dunmore had to go on. 7 words, 2 of which were just filler, written by a woman in Pincher Creek, Alberta, who had since died and could not be held accountable for any of it. Petra had traveled 3 days on 2 trains and a borrowed truck to get here. She had packed everything she owned into one bag because she had not owned much. She had told herself it was practical, starting fresh, that some women paid good money to begin again. She had believed it, mostly, until she stepped off the truck and the man standing at the fence post looked at her the way you look at a problem you didn't cause but are now expected to solve. "Miss Dunmore," he said. "Yes, I'm Callum Shaw." He did not move toward her. "My uncle was Leonard Shaw, the man you were coming to marry." She already knew, before he said another word, from the way he held his hat and did not quite meet her eyes. "Was," she said. "Heart gave out 3 weeks ago." He finally looked at her. His eyes were dark, the kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad night. "I sent a telegram. I didn't receive it. I know. They told me at the post office." She stood there with her bag and the Alberta wind straight through her coat, and thought about the room she had given up in Guelph, Ontario, the job she had left without notice because Mrs. Fenwick had not believed in notice periods, and had made Petra's last 2 weeks uncomfortable enough that leaving immediately felt like the only dignified option. She thought about the money she had spent on the train. She thought about the fact that she was 26 years old and had made this choice, to marry a stranger for the stability of it, for the reprieve of it, because she had genuinely run out of better ones. "Right," she said. Callum Shaw looked at her bag. "You can stay tonight. Roads are icy. I'll drive you to the bus station in Lethbridge in the morning." "Thank you." He picked up her bag before she could argue. She let him, because her arms were tired and because arguing required more certainty than she had at the moment. He walked ahead of her toward the house. She noticed, even then, that he walked slowly enough that she could keep up. The house was the kind that had been built in stages by someone who prioritized usefulness over appearance. The first part was probably 100 years old. The kitchen had been added later. The mudroom had been added after that, and the mudroom was the most modern thing about the property, which told her something about how Callum Shaw organized his priorities. He took off his boots in it without being asked and hung his coat on the left peg, leaving the right peg free. She hung her coat on it. He made soup. She didn't ask him to. He just did it, moving around the kitchen the way men move when they have been cooking alone for a long time, without flourish, without comment, checking things from memory. "You don't have to feed me," she said. "I was making it anyway." She sat at the table because standing felt presumptuous and sitting on the couch felt too familiar. He put the bowl in front of her and sat across from her, and they ate without speaking, and the silence was not comfortable exactly, but it was not hostile either. It was the silence of 2 people who were both very tired and did not feel like pretending otherwise. "How long are you planning to stay?" he asked when she was nearly finished. "You said the morning. I meant in Pincher Creek, in Alberta." He looked at his bowl. "If the bus to Lethbridge doesn't suit you, there are other options. I'm not trying to rush you. You told me you'd take me in the morning. I will if that's what you want." He set down his spoon. "I'm asking what you want." She didn't know what she wanted. That was, she was beginning to think, the central problem of the last several years of her life. She had known what she needed: stability, consistency, a life that did not require her to scramble, but want had always been harder to locate. "I want to sleep," she said. He showed her to the spare room. It had a quilt on the bed that had been washed so many times it was soft all the way through, the kind of softness that can't be bought, only accumulated. There was a lamp on the table and nothing else except a small window that looked out over the dark field and the mountains that were just shapes in the dark. "Bathroom is across the hall," he said. "There's an extra blanket on the shelf if you need it, Mr. Shaw." He stopped in the doorway. "I'm sorry about your uncle," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "He was a good man," he said. "He would have been decent to you." "I know," the letter said. Something moved in his expression. "Get some rest, Miss Dunmore." She did not get some rest. She lay in the dark under the soft quilt and listened to the sounds of an unfamiliar house and thought about what she was doing. She had agreed to marry a man she had never met, because the arrangement had been practical, and because practical had felt, for a while, like wisdom. She had told herself that love was not the only reason to build a life with someone. That compatibility could be chosen, that security could be constructed deliberately by people who were honest with each other about what they were doing. What she had not planned for was arriving to find the man dead. What she had not planned for was the other man, the nephew, with the tired eyes and the free coat peg, standing at the fence looking at her like a problem he was already trying to be fair to. In the morning there was coffee on the stove, and Callum Shaw was not in the house. She found him outside before 7, replacing a section of fence post in the cold with the focused, physical patience of someone for whom this was just a Tuesday. He looked up when he heard the door. "Coffee's on," he said. "I found it." She held up her mug. "Can I ask you something?" He straightened, waited. "Your uncle's ranch, what happens to it?" He set down the post driver. "That's a fair question." He picked up his own mug, which had been sitting on the fence post, and drank from it. "Uncle Leonard didn't have children. He left the land to me and to the arrangement, as he called it, to his estate, pending the marriage. So because he died before the marriage, it's not complicated. The land is mine. Has been technically, since the funeral." He looked at the mountains, which were visible now in the pale morning light, enormous and indifferent. "That's not why I'm telling you to go. I'm not telling you to go because of the land. I didn't think you were. I'm telling you because you came here for something specific, and it's not available anymore." He turned back to her. That's the honest version. She thought about that. It was an honest version. She appreciated it more than she would have appreciated a kinder one. "What if I applied for the position?" she said. He stared at her. "I'm good with books. Accounting. I know how to manage expenses on very little because I've had to. I can cook adequately, and I'm not afraid of animals. I have no particular place to be, and no one expecting me anywhere." She said all of this to the middle distance, because it was easier than saying it to his face. "If you need someone to help manage the ranch administratively, I could be useful to you." He was quiet for long enough that she looked at him. "That's not the same arrangement my uncle had in mind," he said. "No," she agreed. "It's a better one, actually. Less complicated." He looked at her for another moment. She could not read his expression well enough yet to know what was underneath it. Then he said, "I'll think about it." She went inside and refilled her coffee, and did not let herself hope too much, which was something she had been practicing for long enough that she was nearly good at it. He came in at noon and said, "The room is yours until spring. After that, we'll see." She said, "Thank you," and meant it precisely. The first weeks were not easy, but they had a shape to them that Petra found she could work within. She took over the financial records, which had been kept in Leonard Shaw's handwriting in a series of notebooks, with a system that made sense only if you understood how Leonard Shaw had thought, which she didn't, so she developed her own. She asked Callum questions when she needed to understand something. He answered them without making her feel she should have known already. He was not warm, exactly. He was not the kind of man who softened his edges for company. But he was consistent in a way that she had not known to want until she had it. He was the same at breakfast as he was at supper, the same when things went wrong as when they went right. He did not take bad days out on available people. She noticed it early because she had known enough men who did. She noticed other things too. The way he kept the bird feeder full through January when the cold was savage and everything was an effort. The way he drove 40 minutes to pick up the Hendersons' mail when their truck broke down and never mentioned it to her, and she only found out because Mrs. Henderson told her in town. The way he could be completely still, not tense, not checked out, just genuinely at rest inside himself, in a way she had never managed. The thing about living closely with someone you are not in love with is that you are always aware of the line. You know where it is. You don't approach it. You maintain a courtesy that is respectful and real, and just formal enough that nobody gets confused. Petra had been maintaining lines her whole adult life. She was good at it. What she had not accounted for was what happens to the line over time. It started in February with the ice storm. The power went out at 10 in the evening and did not come back. The temperature dropped 20 degrees overnight. She had never experienced cold like it, the structural, comprehensive cold of a southern Alberta January that's to finish what it started. She had grown up in Guelph, where winter was merely unkind. This was something else. She came down at midnight because her room was getting cold, despite the extra blanket, and she didn't know where the emergency lanterns were, and she didn't want to wake him. She was trying to find them by phone light when she heard him on the stairs. "I was going to bring you one," he said. I didn't want to bother you. You weren't." He found the lantern she'd been looking for on the second shelf in the mudroom, which she would not have found in 3 hours of searching. He lit it. The light changed the whole room, made it smaller and warmer in the way that firelight always does. "I'll get the wood stove going in the kitchen. It's the best heat source we've got tonight." She helped him without asking if he needed it. She noticed that he let her. They sat in the kitchen while the stove worked on bringing the temperature up, and because it was midnight and dark outside, and they were both waiting, and there was nothing else to do, they talked. Not about practical things. About other things, where they'd come from, and what they'd thought they'd do, and the particular way life has of presenting you with entirely different plans. She told him about her mother, who had been sick for 4 years and then died, and about the 3 years after that, when Petra had been paying off her mother's debts on a bookkeeper's salary in a city where she had no family left. She told him that she had answered Leonard Shaw's advertisement, not because she was desperate, though she had been, but because she had decided, at some point during those 3 years, that she was going to make deliberate choices instead of just enduring things. He listened. He did not try to reframe any of it, did not offer any of the consolations that make grief feel like a problem to be managed. He just listened, and when she was finished, he said, "That took more nerve than people think. Most people think I was being reckless. Most people haven't had to make that kind of decision." He was looking at the stove. It's easier to call things reckless when your options are wider. She looked at him then. The lantern light was doing something to his face, making him look like a person in a photograph from a long time ago, specific and precise and real. "What about you?" she said. "What about me? What did you think you'd do before all this?" He was quiet for a moment. Not the way people are quiet when they're deciding what to say. The way people are quiet when they're deciding whether to say it at all. "I was going to leave," he said. "I had a plan. I was going to go to BC, work on one of the crews building out in the Kootenays, save enough to buy a piece of land that was mine rather than a family obligation." He turned his mug in his hands. "Then my uncle got sick and there was no one else. And then he died and I was still here, and I had just gradually become the person who was here." He said it without bitterness. "Just fact. It's good land, I know it. I stopped mourning the other version a while ago, but you remember it. Sometimes." She didn't say anything. Sometimes was enough. The power came back at 3 in the morning. They had both fallen asleep at the kitchen table without intending to, and the sudden return of the lights woke her, and she found Callum Shaw asleep across from her with his chin on his forearm, and his face entirely unguarded for the first time since she had arrived. She looked at him for a moment. Then she turned off the kitchen light. It was enough now, warm enough, and left him there and went up to bed. She lay in the dark and was very honest with herself, which was something she did occasionally, the way you press a bruise to see how bad it still is. She was developing feelings for Callum Shaw. That was the honest version. She had not planned for this. She had planned for practicality. She had planned for a business arrangement with a dead she had never met. She had not planned for his nephew, who kept the bird feeder full in January and drove 40 minutes for other people's mail, and had been going to leave but had stayed instead. She thought about the line she had been maintaining. She thought about how much easier it would be if she just kept maintaining it. Then she thought about her mother, who had maintained lines her entire life in service of practicality, and had died without ever once in Petra's memory saying out loud what she actually wanted, and Petra pressed that bruise until she was sure she understood what she was feeling. Then she went to sleep. In March, Callum Shaw came back from Lethbridge with a book she had mentioned once, 6 weeks before, in passing, because she had been trying to find it and couldn't. She did not remember saying it. He clearly had. She held the book and did not look at him and said, "You didn't have to do that. I was at the bookstore anyway," he said, which was almost certainly not true, because the bookstore was on the opposite end of Lethbridge from the hardware supplier, which was where he had actually gone. "Callum," she said. He was already heading toward the mudroom to take his boots off, which was either deliberate avoidance or just efficiency, and she had been here long enough to know she couldn't always tell the difference. "Thank you," she said. He stopped in the doorway to the mudroom. "You're welcome, Petra." It was the first time he had used her first name. She noted it the way she noted the bird feeder and the 40-minute drive. She filed it in the part of herself that was building an accounting of who this man was. April came with mud, and then with green, and the ranch had a different tempo to it, faster, more physical. And she worked alongside him in it because she had arrived in November not knowing how to do anything useful outdoors, and had since learned enough to be genuinely helpful, and she liked the feeling of that. She liked knowing what a thing was and how it worked. She liked knowing that the north fence needed attention before the east fence, and understanding why. She liked knowing his thinking. That was the thing she kept coming back to. One evening in April, she was entering the quarter's records at the kitchen table, and he came in from outside and leaned in the doorway to the kitchen, looking at her in a way she caught out of the corner of her eye and pretended she hadn't. "What?" she said, without looking up. "Nothing. You're doing the thing where you want to say something." A pause. "What thing?" "You go still, stillier than usual." She turned a page. "What is it?" He came in and sat down across from her, which was unusual enough that she put her pen down and looked at him. "The arrangement that was meant to happen," he said carefully. "The one between you and my uncle." She waited. "I've been thinking about whether there's a version of it that would make sense." He was looking at the table. A different version, a current one. She was very quiet inside. The outside of her was also quiet, which she managed through considerable effort. "I'm not saying this because of the land," he said. "I want to be clear about that. I know, and I'm not saying it because you've been useful, though you have been." He looked up. "I'm saying it because I've thought about it a great deal, and I think I would like you to stay. Not until spring. Past spring." He stopped. "If you want to." She thought about her mother. She thought about maintaining lines. She thought about the book in her room that he had driven to the wrong end of Lethbridge to find. "I want to," she said. He nodded. He looked relieved in the way of someone who is not accustomed to hoping for things and had, against their better judgment, hoped for this one. "There are things I should probably tell you," she said, "about me. About what you'd actually be getting." "I know what I'd be getting," he said. "I've been watching all winter. That's not the same as knowing. It's more than most people have." He turned his mug in his hands. "I'm not asking for a guarantee. I'm asking if you want to try." She thought about the particular cruelty of being offered something you want when you have spent a long time managing yourself out of wanting things. She thought about the fact that she had come here for safety and had found something more inconvenient and less deniable. "Callum," she said. "Yes, I came here to marry your uncle. I know, I didn't come here for this, no." He looked at her steadily. "But you stayed." She had stayed. That was true. She had stayed past December and past the ice storm and past February and past the moment in March when he handed her the book, and she had understood, with a clarity that was almost uncomfortable, that she had already decided. "Yes," she said. "I'd like to try." He looked at her the way people look when something they have been careful about is becoming real. Not dramatic, not overwhelmed, just present. Just actually there in a way he hadn't let himself be before. "Okay," he said. Outside the kitchen window, the April light was doing what April light in Alberta does, which is something enormous and unhurried, spreading across the fields in a way that makes everything look possible without making any promises. The north fence still needed attention. The quarter's records were half done. There were 100 practical things to get back to. She picked up her pen. He got up and put the kettle on, and they stayed at the table together in the particular quiet of two people who have said the thing they needed to say and are now, for the first time, not maintaining a line. She had come here for safety. She had not expected to find that safety could feel like this. Not like a door closing, but like a window opening onto something she hadn't known to look for, wide enough for everything she had carried in, and light on the other side.